moment, my kombucha has gone absolutely mental. With all the warm weather, the Scoby inside has gotten so thick that it turns anything that I put in there into vinegar within a few days. So I need to cut it down, and I wanted to show something that I'll do with the Scoby to use it up. You could just throw it straight into the compost bin, and it's amazing for the compost. But there's another way for you to use it to turn it into food. First thing you need to do is you need to clean your hands very, very thoroughly and then remove the Scoby from whatever it is that you're making the kombucha. As you can see, what I have is an awful lot of Scoby. It is very thick. Some of them look nicer than others. Sometimes that tea sediment that you get when you make a cup of tea will stain the Scoby, so some of them always look a little bit more nasty than others. Once I've taken all of the Scoby out, I need to clean out the old jar. I'm going to pour out everything that's left, all the little Scoby and yeast sediment that's left inside. I'm going to put that in the compost bin. It does beautiful things to the compost and really speeds up the process. I'll clean that out very, very thoroughly, and then I'm going to deal with the Scoby. Again, I'm going to wash my hands, cut it up into small pieces, and then I'm going to stick it into the blender. You could just try and stick it straight into the blender, but this stuff is remarkably rubbery. It is going to be a lot easier for your blender to handle it if you cut it up into small pieces. As for what's left, I'm going to save half of that. Now, I was going to try and cut it to a nice even pancake size, but in the end I just ripped it in half, saved half of it, and the other half went into the blender. It does not need to be perfect and even. Once it's put in a new tea with fresh sugar, it's going to start fermenting again and it will be fine. It just won't look very pretty, but there's nothing about a Scoby that looks pretty anyway, so I'm really not bothered about it being a perfect flat little pancake. Once that Scoby's ground up into a really fine pulp, I'm going to start adding the fruit. You can add pretty much whatever kind of fruit you want. Pears, apples. I know some people have done it with bananas. I personally like it with apples. So now I'm going to take those and I'm just going to cut them up and pop them straight into the Scoby. I know some people like to remove the skins. I don't. I like that added texture that it gives to it, and because my blender is really very good, most of the time it deals with the apple skins and just blends them up beautifully. And then after that I'm going to add honey, and the mixture you're looking for, though I am just kind of winging it, is 1/3 Scoby, 1/3 apple, 1/3 honey. If you go a little bit over or under, it's really not the end of the world. The big important part is the dehydration part. You just want to mash that all up. If you're not sure that it's been blended enough, just leave it for a few minutes. Leave it be, and then once it's done, a nice way to know that it's ground up enough is just to take a spoon and run that through it. And if it has a very jelly-like kind of jam consistency and it looks smooth, you know that it's blended just fine. After that, I'm going to be taking a silicone baking sheet, though you could also do this on baking paper if you wanted to. I'm going to pour some out. As you can see, I've got a lot left over, so I'm going to take what I've already got out on the mat, spread it out. This would be a lot easier if you had one of those pastry spatulas. It will be a lot faster and a lot smoother, but I don't have one of those, so I'm just going to use a spoon and try and get it as even as possible. Once that's done, I'm going to stick it in the dehydrator, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on the yogurt setting. So I know some people will normally put it on the fruit setting, but I don't like that because it's too hot and it's going to kill any of that useful probiotic that's in the Scoby if you put it on too high a heat. So I like putting it on the yogurt setting and then have it going for 12, sometimes even 15 hours. And if I have any Scoby left over, what I'll do is I'll just put that into a Tupperware, close that, wait for my first batch to dry, and then I'll make another batch. And now that my jar is clean, I'm going to make a new batch of tea. I'm not going to do an in-depth video about kombucha just because there are already so many good ones already on YouTube. I don't feel like I have anything that I can add to it. So I'm just going to do a quick run over what I do. I'm just going to make a batch of tea with 4 tea bags. For each tea bag, I add 1 spoon of sugar. I'm going to stir that until it's nice and thick and brown and frothy. Once that's nice and cooked, well, not cooked, boiled, I'm going to take the tea bags out, put those aside, and then I'm going to wait for that tea to cool down. You do not want to pour hot tea straight into this because you can make the jar explode. You don't want to do it. Just wait for it to cool down a bit and make 2 or 3 batches so that enough of the jar is full. And then after that, once that tea has definitely cooled down, put the Scoby inside. You do not want to put a Scoby into piping boiling water, you will kill it. So just wait until it's cooled down, clean your hands, pop it inside, and then after that you want to put some kind of cloth over it. I know that some people like to use muslin or cheesecloth. I don't like doing that because especially if the weather gets warmer, I find that you can still end up with little pests and flies trying to get at it. So I like using something slightly thicker like a cotton hanky, which is just used for the kombucha. Put that over. I'll put a rubber band around it to make sure that it's firmly secured, and then I will leave it. Normally within a week, an absolute max of a week and a half, that thing has started to ferment and you get a lovely batch of fresh kombucha. Now for the fruit rolls, as you can see, they've started to dry. I know that some people will normally just leave it at this, but for one, my son really wanted to eat some, so I wanted to take it out, cut a piece for him and give him that. And I also like drying the underside. It's not as much of a problem if you use baking paper because I find that it dries really nicely underneath. But with the the silicone sheets, they don't dry as well underneath, and when I lift them up, you can normally feel that there's a difference in moisture. So I like to flip them over, dehydrate them a little longer, and then I cut them into strips, make them into little Scoby fruit rolls, and then they're good to eat, and they're incredibly sweet and gummy. It tastes like a wine gum, and it's a really nice little probiotic. You can keep it in a Tupperware in the cupboard for a week or two as a nice healthy probiotic sweet. Content and want to follow me on Patreon, that's where you can find my early content, extra content, and see the thought process behind things like my books, cover designs, videos and artwork. You can also find me on Instagram, but the best place to follow me and make sure that all my new content is sent directly to you is through my website and the mailing list. On the top right hand corner you put your name, the email you want your new content to be sent to, and that's it, you're done.